I came home early from a business trip, expecting to surprise my wife. Instead, I found our bedroom half empty. Her side of the closet completely cleared out. There was no warning, no argument the night before, no cold stares or passive-aggressive remarks hinting that something was wrong. One day, I had a wife, a life that felt stable, even predictable. The next, a ghost town of memories and an empty closet where her clothes used to be. I stood there, suitcase still in hand, staring at the unsettling void in front of me. My brain scrambled to find an explanation. Maybe she was redecorating, maybe she was deep cleaning, maybe she had a sudden urge to donate half of her wardrobe to charity. But then, I saw the bathroom counter. Her skincare products, gone. The stupid essential oil diffuser that always made the room smell like a Whole Foods aisle, missing. Even her toothbrush wasn't there. A slow, sinking feeling crawled into my stomach. I pulled out my phone and dialed her number. It rang once, straight to voicemail. That's when the text came through. I can't do this anymore. I'm moving in with someone more successful. Someone who matches my ambitions. I blinked. Read it again. And again. I'd been gone for 3 days. 3 days. And in that time, my wife had not only decided to leave but had already packed up. Vanished. And moved in with someone else? I didn't respond. Didn't even let myself process the words fully. My fingers worked on autopilot. Scrolling to my contacts. Pressing the one name I knew I could count on. Jared. He picked up on the second ring. What's up, man? I swallowed hard, my voice coming out steadier than I expected. I need a divorce lawyer. Fast. A pause. Shit. The next 48 hours were a blur. At first, I waited, not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted an explanation. I stared at my phone, expecting another text, something more than a half-assed breakup message delivered like a resignation notice. But nothing came. Then, my phone exploded. Not from her. From everyone else. Her mom, her sister, even some of our mutual friends. Messages ranged from confused to outright panicked. Jeremy, what's going on? Dana just called me crying, saying she made a mistake. Dude, I just saw Dana's Instagram post. She moved out? What the hell happened? She's blowing up my phone saying you won't answer. Did you guys fight? Are you okay? I ignored all of them. Every single one. I wasn't about to become a contestant in whatever soap opera Dana was trying to orchestrate. Instead, I did 3 things. I called my buddy Jared, who also happens to be a damn good divorce lawyer. I walked around the apartment, taking photos and videos of everything she left behind, everything that was missing, everything that would be relevant for legal proceedings. I sent Dana a single text. Noted, my lawyer will be in touch. That was it. No begging, no anger, no grand declarations, just cold, hard reality. And I meant it. That night, I sat in what was now my apartment, in what was now my bedroom, staring at the empty spaces she left behind. There was an eerie silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the hollow kind, the kind that presses against your chest, making it hard to breathe. I tried to replay the last few months in my head. The small shifts in her tone. The subtle digs about our life versus successful people's lives. The way her eyes used to light up when she talked about a coworker named Christian, the guy who constantly posted about his business trips, luxury vacations, and hustle culture mindset. I thought back to the gym membership she had insisted on getting. Not a normal gym, no. She needed a luxury fitness club. The kind with eucalyptus towels and personal trainers who posted inspirational quotes on Instagram. She had started going 5 days a week. At first, I was proud of her dedication. Encouraged it, even. Now, all I could smell was the lingering trace of unfamiliar cologne on her side of the bed. I clenched my jaw. God, I had been so blind. But I didn't let myself spiral. Didn't throw things. Didn't drown myself in whiskey or drunk dial her family, demanding answers. Instead, I opened my laptop and started making a list. Bank accounts, credit cards, passwords, our lease, the joint phone plan. Step by step, I dismantled what we had built together. She had chosen to walk away. Fine, but she wasn't going to walk away with everything. At 8 p.m., her mom called. I let it go to voicemail. At 10 p.m., her sister Kira texted, Jeremy, what happened? Please talk to me. I didn't reply. At midnight, Dana finally broke her silence. A stream of messages lit up my screen. Jeremy, This is childish. We need to talk. Ignoring me isn't going to change anything. Christian says you're being manipulative by not responding. I let out a slow breath, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Then, I did the simplest, most powerful thing I could do. I turned off notifications. By 3 a.m., I had a clear picture of our finances and a solid to-do list for the morning. The lease? In my name. The utilities? Also in my name. The joint accounts? Still under both of us. Rookie mistake on her part. And then, I realized something. She had left behind all her important documents. Birth certificate, passport, social security card, all locked safely in our fireproof safe. The one she had completely forgotten about in her rush to her more successful life. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I closed my laptop, leaned back, and let exhaustion settle into my bones. I kept waiting for the breakdown. The wave of grief that would crash over me. That would make me want to beg her to come back. To fix things. But it never came. Instead, all I felt was this strange, cold clarity. Like watching the final scene of a movie and realizing the plot twist had been obvious all along. Tomorrow, I would meet with Jared and start the divorce proceedings. Tonight, I would sleep in my half-empty bed. In my half-empty apartment. With a mind that, for the first time in months, felt completely full. I had no idea what was coming next. But for the first time since I stepped through that front door, I was ready. The next morning, sunlight crept through the blinds, casting long shadows over the half-empty bedroom. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, the events of the past day replaying in my mind like a broken record. For the first time in years, I woke up alone, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. And yet, the expected grief still hadn't arrived. No sudden wave of despair. No uncontrollable urge to call her and beg for an explanation. Just that same, quiet clarity. I pulled myself out of bed, stretched, and walked to the bathroom. The counter was barren, her skincare bottles, her makeup brushes, even the floral scented lotion she loved so much. All gone, only my things remained, neatly arranged as if nothing had changed. But everything had. As I brushed my teeth, I stared at my reflection. And that's when it hit me. The signs were always there. It wasn't like she woke up one day and decided to leave. No, this had been a slow burn. A gradual erosion of everything we had built together. The pieces were all there, scattered through the past year like breadcrumbs leading to an inevitable conclusion. I had just been too blind, or maybe too unwilling, to see them. I walked into the kitchen, made a cup of coffee, and let my mind drift back. 6 months ago, she had started talking about success differently. Not in the way we used to, the way we dreamed about building our future together. Growing at our own pace. Instead, her definition had shifted. Success was no longer about fulfillment or stability. It was about status, about visibility. "You're too comfortable," she had said one night over dinner. Scrolling through her phone, barely looking at me. People who really want something, they go after it. They don't just wait around, hoping life works out. At the time, I had laughed, assuming it was just one of those motivational rants she picked up from whatever self-help podcast she had been binging. But now, I saw it for what it was. She wasn't just making a general statement. She was talking about me. 4 months ago, her gym membership. "I just feel like I need to level up. You know," she had said, standing in front of me with that bright, almost rehearsed enthusiasm. "There's this new place downtown, super high-end. All the big names go there. It's a little pricey, but I think it's worth it." I had smiled, nodded, even encouraged her. "If it makes you happy, go for it." I never questioned why a woman who had never cared about working out suddenly needed a luxury fitness club with personal trainers and spa amenities. Never questioned why, after a few weeks, she stopped inviting me to go with her. Never questioned why, every time she came home late, she smelled like a cologne that wasn't mine. 2 months ago, the Instagram obsession had reached a whole new level. It started with subtle comparisons. Christian just got back from Dubai. "Did you see his post? His company sent him first class. Babe, look at this car. Can you imagine driving something like this? We should start traveling more. Everyone else is making memories while we're just existing." At first, I didn't take it seriously. Christian, her coworker, was the kind of guy who curated his life online. The type who posted motivational quotes about grinding hard while conveniently never mentioning that his parents were funding half his adventures. I had told her exactly that. But she had just smiled, shaking her head. You always make excuses for why we don't have more. Maybe if you pushed yourself a little harder, we wouldn't be stuck in the same place. That was the first time she ever used the word stuck to describe our life. And now, I understood why. She wasn't planning a future with me. She was already planning her exit. A sharp knock on the door jolted me back to the present. I wasn't expecting anyone. I set my coffee down and walked over. Peering through the peephole, it was Kira, Dana's younger sister. I hesitated before opening the door, but curiosity got the best of me. Hey, she said softly, stepping inside before I could even invite her. I closed the door and turned to face her. If you're here to defend your sister, I'm not. That caught me off guard. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I should have warned you. When I saw the signs, I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. But I knew this was coming. I folded my arms, studying her. What do you mean you knew? She hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, she spoke. Because she did the same thing to her last boyfriend before you. The words hung in the air like a grenade, waiting to explode. I stared at her, my mind scrambling to process. Wait, what? Kira shifted uncomfortably. Before you, she dated this guy, Mark. He was a good guy. But he wasn't flashy. She started making little comments about his lack of ambition. Started surrounding herself with people who had money. And then, one day, she just left. Moved in with some guy who seemed more successful. But that relationship lasted 3 months before she realized his success was mostly debt and leased cars. My stomach twisted. History had repeated itself. And I had been the fool who thought I was different. Look, I'm not here to make excuses for her. Kira continued, her voice softer now. I just wanted you to know, this isn't about you not being good enough. It never was. I nodded slowly, exhaling. Thanks for telling me. She gave me a small, sad smile. Just take care of yourself. Okay? She's going to realize she made a mistake. And when she does, she's going to come running back. Be ready for that. I already was. Before I share what happened next, the moment that turned this entire situation upside down, I want to connect with you. My amazing viewers, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever had to fight for something you believe in, hit that like button, because this story is just getting started. After Kira left, I sat in the quiet, letting the reality settle in. Dana hadn't just left me. She had replaced me, traded me in for an illusion of a better life. And now, as I scrolled through my phone, reading her increasingly desperate messages asking about her forgotten documents, I realized something that almost made me laugh. She had moved on too fast. She had burned every bridge. And she had left without a safety net. This wasn't just my heartbreak. This was her biggest mistake. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I felt completely at peace. The morning after my conversation with Kira, I woke up to my phone vibrating non-stop on the nightstand. I knew before even looking who it was. Dana. For the past 3 days, she had been sending messages, alternating between polite requests and outright demands. Jeremy, I need my birth certificate for a new job. Where did you put my passport? Stop ignoring me. We need to talk. Christian says you're legally required to give me my documents. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I rubbed my temples and sighed. She still didn't get it. The old me might have picked up, might have entertained the idea of hearing her out, of trying to understand why she did what she did. But that version of me no longer existed. I unlocked my phone, scrolled to my lawyer's contact, and forwarded him every single message. Then, with the same calculated patience I had been using since this entire thing started, I typed one single response. All communication must go through legal representatives. Contact information has been provided. And then I hit send. No emotion, no anger, just facts. A minute later, 3 dots appeared. Then they vanished. Then they appeared again. I could almost hear the frustration through the screen. Finally, her reply came through. You're unbelievable. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't reacting anymore. I was moving forward. The next step was making sure every single loose end was tied up. First, I contacted my bank. Froze our joint credit cards. Not out of pettiness, but because they were still under both of our names. And I wasn't about to let her run up a bill while she played house with her, more successful, man. Second, I changed every single password to accounts she once had access to. Streaming services, phone plans, utilities, even the stupid food delivery apps we used to share. She had chosen to leave? Fine. Then she would leave everything. By noon, I was at my lawyer's office. Jared greeted me with a firm handshake before leading me to his office, where stacks of legal paperwork were already waiting. I've seen a lot of messy divorces, he said, flipping through a folder. But this is one of the cleanest cases I've ever handled. I raised an eyebrow. How so? He smirked. Because she left first, and she admitted to moving in with someone else. In writing, she basically handed you the advantage on a silver platter. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. She really thought she was trading up. Jared nodded. And now she's realizing she didn't take the elevator. She took the stairs, and they're crumbling beneath her. I glanced down at my phone, where Dana's last unread messages still sat. Yeah, that sounded about right. 2 days later, Kira called again. So, have you been on social media lately? I frowned, setting my coffee down. No. Why? There was a pause before she exhaled sharply. You might want to check Dana's Instagram. I hesitated. The last thing I wanted was to dive into whatever drama she was creating online. But curiosity got the best of me. I opened the app and found her profile. Her usual posts, carefully curated photos of expensive brunches, designer bags, gym selfies, had been replaced with something very, very different. A wall of text. Long, rambling captions about toxic people who use money as control. About learning who your real friends are. About how some men can't handle a strong woman leveling up. I huffed a quiet laugh. She was losing control of the narrative. And she hated it. Kira sighed. She's spiraling. Jeremy, her and Christian, it's not working out the way she thought it would. I didn't bother pretending to be surprised. Let me guess. The luxury life isn't as glamorous when you're living off maxed out credit cards? Worse, Kira muttered. Christian's company started layoffs. He's 3 months behind on rent. The Tesla? Repossessed last week. And now Dana's realizing she left with nothing. A slow smile spread across my face. Not out of satisfaction, but because karma was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. I didn't have time to waste worrying about her problems. While she was drowning in regret, I was rebuilding. I started going to the gym, not just for revenge. Not for some dramatic transformation. But because I needed an outlet. Something that made me feel in control of my own life again. And somewhere between the weights and the exhaustion, I realized, I liked it. It felt good. I felt good. Then, one night, as I was finishing a workout, my trainer Marcus clapped me on the shoulder. Dude, I gotta introduce you to someone. I wiped sweat from my forehead. Who? He grinned. My cousin. She's coming by to pick me up. You'll like her. I rolled my eyes. Marcus, if this is some elaborate setup. Nah, relax. Man, she's cool. Just say hi. So I did. And that's how I met Adrian. I wasn't looking for anyone. I wasn't even thinking about dating. But from the moment she walked in, hair tied up in a messy bun, scrubs still on from her hospital shift, a genuine, unfiltered smile, something in my chest shifted. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't talking about Instagram-worthy vacations or networking events or leveling up. She was talking about how one of her kid patients tried to convince her that dinosaurs still existed. And I laughed. Not the polite, forced laugh I had gotten so used to. A real one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't even realized I was missing. Peace. The next night, as I was sitting on my couch, I got a text. Not from Adrian. Not from Kira. From Dana. I saw you today. I blinked. Then another message came through. You really moved on that fast? My lips curled into a smirk. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I replied. I moved forward. She didn't respond. But I knew she would. Because for the first time, she wasn't the one walking away. She was the one being left behind. I had always heard people say that karma is patient. That it doesn't strike when you expect it, but when it's most inconvenient. I never really believed in that, until now. Because while I was steadily rebuilding my life, Dana's so-called upgrade was crumbling before her eyes. And I didn't have to lift a single finger. It started subtly. The extravagant Instagram posts, the ones filled with rooftop cocktails, luxury car selfies, and five-star hotel stays, began to slow down. At first, I thought maybe she had simply gotten too comfortable in her new life to keep broadcasting every moment. But then the tone of her captions changed. Gone were the blessed and thriving updates. Instead, they were replaced with vague, moody reflections about the unpredictability of life and learning who your real friends are. She wasn't fooling anyone. The cracks were showing. I had all but forgotten about her until one evening, when Kira called me again. "Jeremy, you're going to want to hear this." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my drink. "Go on," she sighed. "So, Christian, the successful guy she left you for? Turns out his amazing career isn't so amazing anymore." That got my attention. "What happened?" Kira let out a humorless laugh. "His company started laying people off. Guess who was one of the first to go?" I raised an eyebrow. "Wait, he got fired?" "Not technically, but his contract wasn't renewed. Basically, he went from rising star to unemployed finance bro in record time. And now, all those fancy trips, the expensive dates, the bottle service at clubs, all of it was funded on credit. Credit that he can't pay off anymore." I exhaled, shaking my head. "So, basically, she jumped onto a sinking ship?" Kira snorted. "More like she jumped from a perfectly stable ship onto what she thought was a luxury yacht. Only to realize it was a glorified lifeboat with a hole in the bottom." I chuckled. It was poetic. She had traded stability for an illusion. And now, the illusion was crumbling. A few days later, I bumped into a mutual friend, someone who had kept in contact with both of us. "Dude, you are not gonna believe the mess Dana is in right now." I raised an eyebrow. "Try me." He smirked, leaning in. "So, apparently, Christian's luxury apartment? The one he always flexed about on Instagram? Turns out it was rented under his parents' names because his credit score was trash. And guess what? His parents are pulling the plug. He's behind on payments. And now they're selling the place." I exhaled slowly, nodding. "And Dana?" He grinned. "She's panicking. Apparently, she assumed she'd be moving into a stable life with him. But now, she's stuck. No apartment, no steady income, no backup plan. She left you thinking she was trading up. But all she got was a front row seat to a financial disaster." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not out of spite. Not because I was happy about her downfall. But because it was so inevitable. She had spent months chasing the idea of a more successful life, without ever stopping to consider if the success she admired was real. And now, she was paying the price. It was around this time that her texts started again. At first, they were transactional. "I still need my documents. We should talk about how to handle things." I ignored them. Then they became something else. "I miss us. I miss you. Maybe we should have talked more before everything happened. I made a mistake." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. The words felt hollow. Not because they weren't true, but because they were too late. I wasn't the same person I had been 3 months ago. Back then, if she had said these things, I might have held on to hope. I might have replayed every moment of our relationship, wondering where I went wrong, what I could have done differently. But now, I saw the situation for exactly what it was. She wasn't reaching out because she loved me. She was reaching out because she had nowhere else to go. And I wasn't about to be anyone's backup plan. The final confirmation of just how bad things had gotten came a week later. I was having lunch with Adrian at a small sandwich shop downtown when I felt the weight of someone staring at me. I glanced up, and there she was. Dana. She was sitting across the cafe with a friend. Her expression unreadable. She wasn't wearing designer clothes anymore. No flawless makeup. No expensive accessories. Just a simple sweater and jeans. She looked normal. For the first time since this entire mess started, she didn't look like someone who had leveled up. She looked like someone who had lost everything. For the next 20 minutes, she didn't order anything. She didn't even pretend to be there for lunch. She just watched. Watched as Adrian laughed at one of my dumb jokes. Watched as I reached for her hand without even thinking about it. Watched as I moved forward with my life in a way she never expected me to. And then, without a word, she got up and walked out. I didn't watch her go. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, I knew. She finally understood what she had done. And she knew she could never undo it. Later that night, The texts came in waves. I don't even recognize you anymore. You've changed. I thought you were better than this. I smirked, shaking my head. And then I typed the last text I would ever send her. No, I'm just finally seeing things clearly. And with that, I blocked her number. Because the truth was, she was right about one thing. I had changed, but not in the way she thought. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't broken. I was just done. And there was nothing more satisfying than letting go. The thing about healing is that it doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly, in the smallest, most unexpected moments. At first, it was just a full night of sleep, the kind that wasn't interrupted by overthinking, by scrolling through old texts, by the restless weight of wondering if I had failed somehow. Then, it was enjoying silence, not the oppressive kind that used to fill the apartment after Dana left, but the peaceful kind, the kind that meant I was no longer waiting for something that wasn't coming back. And finally, it was realizing that I was truly happy again. Not just content, not just surviving, but thriving. It started with my job. After cutting my business trip short to deal with the disaster Dana had left behind, I thought I had put myself at a disadvantage. I figured my bosses would see me as unreliable or distracted. But instead, the opposite happened. I had stepped in at the perfect moment to handle a crisis while everyone else was still traveling back. I had fixed problems no one else had been available to handle. And people had noticed. A month later, I was sitting across from my boss in his office when he slid a folder across the desk. "You deserve this," he said simply. I opened it. Inside was an official promotion letter, a title bump, a pay increase, and more flexibility in my schedule. "We've been watching you," he continued. "You work hard, you stay calm under pressure, and you don't let distractions pull you off course. We need more people like that in leadership." I almost laughed at the irony. Because just a few months ago, Dana had left me because she thought I wasn't ambitious enough. And now? Now I was moving up without her. Then there was the gym. What had started as a distraction, a way to fill the empty space in my schedule, had turned into something more. I liked the feeling of pushing myself, of seeing progress in real time, of becoming stronger in ways that weren't just physical. And one day, as I caught my reflection in the gym mirror, I realized something. I didn't just look different. I felt different, lighter, more confident, more in control. For the first time in a long time, I actually liked who I was becoming. And the best part? It had nothing to do with impressing anyone. Then, of course, there was Adrienne. What started as a casual friendship, two people meeting by chance at the gym, quickly became something else. Something effortless. She didn't play games, didn't measure success by social media clout. Didn't care about appearances or optics or any of the things Dana had been obsessed with. She cared about real things. Her patients at the hospital. Her family. The way she could never get through a horror movie without covering her face at the jump scares. She had this ability to find joy in the simplest things, morning coffee, a stupid joke, a perfectly grilled sandwich. And being around her? It made me realize how exhausting it had been to constantly chase someone else's idea of happiness. Meanwhile, Dana's life was falling apart. I didn't go looking for updates, but they had a way of finding me. It was in the desperate messages she kept sending from new numbers. It was in the panicked phone call from her mother. It was in the way her social media presence had completely unraveled. Gone were the polished, blessed and thriving posts. In their place? Long, unhinged rants about toxic people. About learning the hard way that some people just use you. About realizing what truly matters too late. Her captions had shifted from bragging to subtle pleas for sympathy. And the comments? They told a story of their own. What happened to Christian? Girl, didn't you say you upgraded a few months ago? What changed? This feels like a midlife crisis but early. You good? I didn't respond. I didn't even feel the urge to. Because I had nothing to prove. Karma was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. And the best revenge? Was not needing revenge at all. The final blow came one afternoon when I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a notification popped up. A message. From Christian. I raised an eyebrow and hit play. Man, you need to be reasonable here. Just give her the documents and stop being difficult. This is beneath you. I laughed. Out loud. Because of course, Christian, the guy Dana had left me for. The guy who was supposed to be so much more successful than I was now calling me for help. Me, the guy she had abandoned for something better. And now? Now that something better had completely collapsed, I sent the voicemail straight to my lawyer. Then I blocked his number. Because if Dana wanted something from me, she'd have to go through legal channels. Just like everyone else. A week later, Kira called again. She's moving back home. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. For real? Yeah, Kira sighed. She and Christian are done. Turns out he wasn't the visionary businessman she thought he was. Just a guy with bad credit and leased furniture. She tried to stick it out. But when his apartment got repossessed, she had no choice. I exhaled slowly. So she's back where she started. Pretty much. She's talking about finding herself now. Saying she needs to focus on personal growth. But Jeremy. She hesitated. She's miserable. She won't admit it. But I know her. She thought she was leaving for something better. But now, all she's left with is the realization that she threw away something solid for a fantasy. There was a long pause. Then Kira spoke again, her voice softer. I just wanted you to know. So that if she ever tries to reach out again, you remember what she did. I smiled. I won't forget. That night, as I sat on my couch with Adrian, she nudged me playfully. You're staring off into space. Penny for your thoughts? I smirked. Just thinking about how funny life is. How people always think the grass is greener until they realize it's just astroturf. She laughed. Well, lucky for you. I'm more of a real plants and cozy backyard kind of girl. I looked at her, really looked at her, and something inside me settled. Because for the first time in a long time, I knew I wasn't just moving on. I was moving up. And best of all, I wasn't looking back. It had been months since Dana walked out of my life. Months since she sent that cold, detached text about moving in with someone more successful. Months since I had felt the weight of her choices press against my chest like an iron bar. Suffocating and unrelenting. And now, finally, it was coming to an end. The document exchange was scheduled for 2 p.m. at my lawyer's office. It was supposed to be straightforward, hand over her remaining belongings, sign the last set of legal paperwork, and close this chapter of my life for good. But of course, nothing with Dana had ever been straightforward. And today would be no exception. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a crisp button-down and slacks. The embodiment of someone who had their life together. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking she had shaken me. Not when I was standing on the other side of everything she had tried to destroy. Jared greeted me at the door, his usual confident smirk in place. You ready for this? I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders back. Let's get it over with. We walked into the conference room, where a neatly packed box of Dana's remaining belongings sat on the table, her birth certificate, passport, and a few personal items she had conveniently forgotten in her rush to leave. I sat down, fingers drumming lightly against the polished wood surface. And then, at exactly 2:15, Dana walked in. I barely recognized her. The woman standing in the doorway wasn't the polished, put-together Dana I once knew. Her hair, once always styled to perfection, was now hastily pulled into a messy bun. The designer clothes she used to flaunt had been replaced with a wrinkled, oversized sweater and jeans that hung a little too loose. But it wasn't just her appearance. It was her eyes. There was no arrogance in them. No fire. No confidence. Just exhaustion. And behind her, trailing in like an afterthought, was Christian. I nearly laughed out loud. He looked worse than she did. His suit jacket was too big, probably borrowed. His tie was loose. The collar of his dress shirt wrinkled like he had pulled it out of a laundry pile at the last minute. And on his face? A forced confidence. A look that screamed, I still matter. Right? I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. This was going to be fun. Dana's eyes flickered to mine, then to Jared, then to the box on the table. I just want my things, she said quietly, reaching for it. Jared held up a hand, stopping her. Your lawyer was supposed to be here, he said smoothly. Why isn't he? Dana shifted uncomfortably. He couldn't make it. Jared raised an eyebrow but didn't press. Instead, he calmly slid a set of legal documents toward her. Sign these first. She hesitated, glancing at Christian, who was suddenly very interested in his phone. Then she exhaled sharply. grabbing a pen and scrawling her signature across the pages. It was almost too easy. And that's when she snapped. "You think you won, don't you?" Her voice was low but edged with something sharp. Something desperate. I met her gaze. "Unbothered. I don't have to win. You lost all on your own." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "You enjoyed this, didn't you? Watching me struggle, pretending to be the bigger person while secretly hoping I'd fall apart." I tilted my head. "You think I needed to hope? You did that all on your own too." Her face flushed red, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the old Dana, the one who used to get whatever she wanted. But this time, there was no way out. No safety net, no backup plan, and worst of all, no audience left to admire her performance. Christian, sensing the tension, cleared his throat and took a step forward, puffing up his chest. "Man, you need to be reasonable. Just give her the documents and stop being difficult. This is beneath you." I turned slowly to face him. Then I smirked. "You mean like how your Tesla was beneath the repo truck last week?" His jaw clenched. Dana whipped around to glare at him. "Wait, what?" I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't tell her?" Christian's face paled. Dana's expression darkened. "You told me that was a glitch in the system," she hissed. I let out a low chuckle, shaking my head. "Wow, that's impressive. He's been lying to you longer than I expected." She turned back to me, something breaking in her expression. "Jeremy, please," she whispered, voice trembling now. "I made a mistake. I miss us. I miss you. I miss our life. I just want to go back." For the first time since she left, there was no manipulation in her voice. No hidden agenda. Just regret. Deep, cold, unforgiving. But I felt nothing. No anger. No pity. Not even satisfaction. Because the truth was, she had stopped being my problem a long time ago. I pushed the box toward her. "Here are your things. Have a good life." And with that, I stood up, buttoned my jacket, and walked out. She sat outside the building for 2 hours. I knew because the security cameras captured every second of it. She alternated between crying, texting, and staring at the door like she expected me to come back out. But I never did, because I didn't owe her anything. Not closure. Not forgiveness. Not even a final conversation. She had made her choices. And now, she had to live with them. That night, as I sat on my couch, Adrienne curled up next to me, her head resting against my shoulder. "How did it go?" she asked softly. I smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "It's over," she exhaled, her fingers lacing through mine. "Good, you deserve that." And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I truly believed it, because I wasn't just free from Dana. I was free from the person I used to be. The one who thought love was about sacrifice. The one who believed loyalty meant ignoring red flags. The one who had been afraid of being alone. Now I knew what real love looked like. And it wasn't desperate. It wasn't conditional. It wasn't something you abandoned the moment something shinier came along. It was steady. It was safe. It was real. And as I looked at Adrienne, at the woman who had shown me what a true partnership felt like, I realized something. This wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of something so much better. And I couldn't wait to see what came next. Closure doesn't come in a single moment. It's not one grand event where everything falls neatly into place, wrapped in a bow, with clear resolutions and dramatic endings. No, closure comes slowly, in the quiet moments. In the choices you make every day. In the way you wake up one morning and realize that the past no longer holds any weight over you. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. The first real sign that I had truly moved forward was how little I thought about Dana anymore. There was a time when she was inescapable. Every thought, every memory, every decision I made somehow felt tied to her in some way. Whether it was frustration, regret, or just sheer disbelief at how things had unfolded. She had occupied far too much space in my mind. But now she was nothing more than a footnote in my story. Something I had lived through, not something I was still living with. Life, it turns out, had a funny way of rewarding patience. After months of pushing myself at work, the benefits kept stacking up. My promotion wasn't just a pay bump, it was a complete shift in my career. I had more freedom now, more control over my schedule, more influence over projects, more opportunities to build something that actually mattered. And the best part? I had no one to answer to. No one constantly comparing me to someone else. No one whispering about what I could be doing instead. No one measuring my worth against someone else's Instagram posts. Just me, doing what I was good at. Building something on my own terms. And it felt damn good. Outside of work, everything was thriving. The gym had become more than a habit, it was a sanctuary. A place where I pushed myself, tested my limits, and saw the results in ways I had never expected. I was stronger, faster, sharper, and not just physically. The discipline bled into other parts of my life. I was waking up earlier. I was eating better. I was taking care of myself in ways I never had before. Not for revenge, not for validation, but because I deserved it. And then, of course, there was Adrienne. She had come into my life like a quiet force, never demanding, never overwhelming, just there. And the more time I spent with her, the more I realized just how easy love was supposed to be. There were no games, no unspoken expectations, no feeling like I had to constantly prove myself just to be worthy of someone's affection. With Adrienne, there was only mutual respect, mutual admiration, a partnership that actually felt balanced. And the more I got to know her, the more I saw just how different she was from Dana in every way that mattered. She wasn't impressed by titles. She didn't care about status. She celebrated the small things. Like the way I had finally perfected my steak recipe. Like the dumb inside jokes we made at 2 a.m. Like the simple pleasure of sitting in silence together. Completely comfortable in each other's presence. It was real. And I wasn't afraid of losing it. Because for the first time, I knew this was something built on a foundation that wouldn't crumble. One evening, as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset, Adrienne turned to me, her eyes warm and full of something I wasn't sure I deserved. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked softly. I took a slow breath, considering the question. Then I smiled, not in the way I used to. She nodded, as if she already knew the answer. "Good." Then, after a moment, she smirked, "Because I don't plan on competing with a ghost." I laughed, shaking my head. "You don't have to." She was never even in the same league. Her laughter joined mine, light and unburdened. And just like that, I knew I had won. Not because Dana had lost. Not because I had somehow proven her wrong. But because I was no longer the man she walked away from. I was better. And not for her. For me. A few weeks later, Kira called me again. "You're not gonna believe this," she started, a strange amusement in her voice. I raised an eyebrow. "What now?" "Dana's engaged." I nearly choked on my drink. "To who?" Kira laughed. "Some guy she met 2 months ago. He's successful, apparently. But we both know how that usually turns out." I shook my head, exhaling. "Wow, that's fast, right?" Kira agreed. "It's almost like she never actually learns." I didn't respond right away. Because for the first time, I didn't feel anything about it. No bitterness. No resentment. Not even mild curiosity. It was just irrelevant. "Well," I said finally, stretching out on the couch. "I hope it works out for her." Kira snorted. "Do you, though?" I chuckled. "Not even a little." And with that, I ended the call, shaking my head in amusement. Because at the end of the day, Dana could do whatever she wanted. She could chase whatever illusion of happiness she thought she needed. Because none of it had anything to do with me anymore. That night, as Adrienne curled up beside me, I realized something. The best revenge isn't watching someone else fail. It's not caring if they do. And as I lay there, listening to the quiet rhythm of her breathing, I smiled. Because this was the real victory. Not proving myself. Not rubbing my success in anyone's face. But finally, truly, moving forward. And I had never felt lighter.